Well, you mentioned sponsorships. How did you get those? I mean, did you actively go out and research them, or did people come to you?
Well, I started out when they started out, so it was kind of interesting. The first maybe 6 games that I made, I didn't make anything off of. There wasn't even like ad share then. It was just literally doing it for fun. But then by 2005, 2006, you started seeing these sponsors appear. These basically startup websites that were looking for kind of exclusive games for their sites. And I think it was like Armor Games, Newgrounds.com, Congregate, and a bunch of other different portals that would offer you a small amount of sponsorship money to put their ad in the beginning of the game, and then like maybe an ad that said like play more games, and you click it or whatever in your game. And those started out really small. You could get like a couple $100 to maybe $1,000, like when it started out, and then it started getting bigger and bigger. And before I stopped getting sponsored and stuff, they were tipping out at like 15 grand for a sponsorship, and that was around the time when Adult Swim and other companies came in and started buying IPs, and those would go between 20 and 40,000 to buy Flash game IPs. So it went from like something where, in the early 2000s you couldn't really make any money off of, to something that you could make a substantial living, because usually Flash games you don't spend more than 3 months on. If you do, it's probably not gonna end up worth it. But for 3 months on something that you sell for 30 or 40 grand is a substantial amount of money for a developer. Of course, the game has to be good, and it helps if you have a name for yourself as well, because that's what I noticed as well. It's not really the quality of my games that mattered to the sponsor, but more so just the fact that my name was on them by right around Meat Boy time. So yeah, that's kind of how sponsorships work. You just go to a sponsor, and there's actually a few hubs for this. I never used the hubs because since I started out with this industry as it started, I tend to know everybody who is the bigger sponsors, and usually lean towards ones that I respect more than I actually get money from. Like, I tend to always lean towards Newgrounds because I know Tom Fulp personally. He's a developer. He understands developers. And even though I get less money from him than someone like Armor Games, I would go with him because I felt more comfortable with the fact that he understood what I wanted, and he wouldn't be all about like making sure that the ad for his website was a little closer to the start bar. Like, so you might accidentally click it. The kind of weird stuff like that other sponsors might run into. But you just got to play it by ear, and over time you just kind of learn how to gauge how a sponsor feels about what you're doing, and then you can even play them against each other, which is always fun. Because you can be like, so-and-so is going to give me this much. And then you go back and forth and watch the money go up. But yeah, it's sponsors, it kind of it's good and bad. It's fun to have fun with this sort of stuff, which I try to do. But the business aspect of game design kind of sucks. And usually, if you're like a creative person and you're trying to do this, this will be the part that you hate, because it's not really. It really has nothing to do with game design. It has everything to do with business and social interaction, which is something I've learned to get better at, but I wasn't always good at. It's just something you learn over time, even though you don't really like. And it's good to just try to have fun with it, even if it sucks, even if it means lying and just fucking with people.